What's crackin', you beautiful persons? So before we delve into our adventure, I'm gonna say that the structure I set up in the last video just doesn't really work that well, as games have tons of different parts to them that interact with each other. So while splitting it up into different segments worked well in a short game like Dreamland, it just doesn't hold up as well in a bigger adventure like this. However, I will still be ranking it overall based off these 5 categories, just not gonna split up the actual video in the same way, it makes it too confusing. Okay, enough about the boring stuff. Kirby's Adventure, releasing a year after Kirby's Dreamland in 1993 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, meaning we have color now. Finally proving that Kirby is pink. Take that, everywhere else besides Japan. Though I will say that it is a little odd that this came out in 1993, considering the Super Nintendo Entertainment System came out in 1990, and most games are switching gears to 16-bit. This is still a really good game though, so what's better than making the NES go out with a bang? The game was once again directed by Masahiro Sakurai, with a similar team helping with the rest of the game, alongside some new faces. One of which being the creator of F-Zero, which I think is pretty neat. Fun fact, each person in this photo was asked to draw Kirby and these were the results. You know, some days you feel like Sakurai's Kirby, and other days you feel like Suga's Kirby. The game itself has released a total of 6 times. Originally on the NES, on the 3DS through the 3D Classic series of games, making it more of a remaster, on Kirby's Dream Collection for the Wii, on the Wii U, on the NES Classic Edition, and lastly on the Nintendo Switch NES app. I'm going to be playing it on the Switch and on the 3DS to get a better feel for the original and its remaster. There is also a remake of the game being Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland, but that's for another day. Fun fact, this game turned 30 years old on March 23rd. Bet all the people that played this game when it first came out feel old, don't ya? Yeah, I was -21 when this came out. Kirby's Adventure itself is the second game in the franchise, and arguably the most influential, with a bunch of features and design choices setting standards for every game in the future. While Kirby's Dreamland was the first game, go watch that video if you haven't, setting up the concept of Kirby itself, Kirby's Adventure fully expands upon it, ultimately finding a much fuller potential for the pink puffball. But what is the influence that this game had? Short answer, long answer, keep watching Bozo. Booting up the game, we're greeted with the cute little tutorial that you saw at the beginning of the video, depicting how to draw Kirby. I personally love this, but Sakurai's goal with Kirby was to make a character that's easy to draw, so this is just adorable. Plus, I finally know how to draw Kirby. Thanks, Sakurai. After the intro scene, we get a little tutorial on how to play the game, which is just really nice. The Dreamland tutorial of just giving you a space to learn was cool and all, but actually having something in the game that describes which buttons do what is really helpful. After going through the tutorial, Kirby jumps onto his warp star and does a little jig for us while we get to learn about the story. It's actually a part of the game now, another major plus. Here's a summary of the excerpt. Everyone in Dreamland is having insomnia. Kirby goes to the source of all dreams, this fountain. He finds naughty DDD swimming in the fountain. DDD broke up the star rod and gave it to his amigos. Now you're going to super glue it back together. Not a super complex story, but there is a lot more to it compared to Dreamland. These drawings are also just super cute. Like, look at Kirby being a little adventurer with his bindle. Bindle. So Kirby's saving the day once again, but let's see how he plays this time around. You have all the previous moves that you had in Kirby's Dreamland. Jump and health, float, the whole shebang. However, this game does introduce 2 new moves, being the slide and dash. The slide is activated by holding down and pressing either the jump or the attack button, propelling you forwards while damaging enemies and breaking blocks. It's also very useful for dodging enemy attacks. The dash is activated by double tapping in whichever direction you want to go. It makes Kirby, well, dash, pretty fast too. Kirby's zooming in this game. Frick gave this guy sugar. Both of these will become series staples, appearing in every other mainline game after this. Which makes sense because these feel right at home. Perfect additions to Kirby's moveset. Now finally, probably the biggest addition to this game that changed the entire series trajectory and made Kirby what it is today. The double star projectile. If you inhale 2 enemies and spit them out, it'll shoot a superstar projectile, doing massive damage and piercing anything in its path. Finally, chaining 2 enemies together feels super satisfying and rewarding. I honestly don't know where the series would be without this. Oh yeah, I guess this too. Kirby's copy ability. One of the most interesting concepts for a mechanic made its first appearance here. You suck up an enemy, press down to swallow it, And you can get its power, be it elemental, weaponry, or whatever this is. It's hard to deny how awesome this power is. While it's nowhere near as complex as it is today, only having about one attack for each ability, it's still super cool and fun to mess around with. There's a whopping 24 abilities introduced in this game. There weren't any hats yet to indicate your abilities. Instead, each ability has its own little art to show what Kirby has at the time. While it's not as adorable as hats, I do still really like the art. It's super cute and creative. Kirby himself also changes color whenever he gets an ability, but most of the time he just changes from pink to peach. The game also introduces a little tutorial for the copy abilities after showing you the controls. Once again, really nice for them to include this. Side note, there is technically 26 abilities if you want to count Hyper and Star Rod as their own, as they have their own art, but they're temporary items rarely found in the game, so I'm not going to include them. Also, all these things also have art, and I'm not going to include them either. Now, I'm going to shine a bit of light on each of the abilities to show what they are and how they work, so let's get started. Fire. Gained by hotheads. You're able to shoot a stream of fire in front of you, gaining the ability to light fuses. A little annoying as anything with projectiles slows the game down, but it does do massive damage. Fireball. Gained by flamers. It allows you to launch forward while encasing yourself in flames, not to be confused by fire in future games as the two abilities become fused. It has the capability to light fuses and break through ice. Laser. Gained by laser balls. Allows you to shoot a laser in a straight line. The lasers are able to bounce off slopes and change directions, and they also light fuses. The art is kind of misleading as it shows Kirby shooting the laser upwards, when in reality you can only shoot it forwards, but who cares. Ice. Gained by pingies. Pingies. It's similar to fire in the sense that it shoots a stream in front of you, with it being ice instead. Once you freeze an enemy, they turn into a block that you can launch forward, making a projectile. Freeze. Gained by Mr. Frosty and Chili's. You create a shield of ice crystals around you, freezing anything that comes in your path, and once again, being able to be launched. Also not to be confused with ice in future games, as they fuse into one. Spark. Gained by Sparkies. You create an aura of electricity around you, dealing massive damage to anything that comes in your path. Needle. Gained by Togezos. You create a ball of needles around you, piercing anything in your wake. I'm just trying to change up the wording so it isn't repetitive, okay? Beam. Gained by Waddle Doos. You shoot an arch of magical energy, I guess, in front of you. Looks really cool, but it does, like, no damage to bosses, so it's kind of disappointing. Stone. Gained by Rockies. You gain the ability to turn into a super heavy boulder, crushing anything below you and leaving you impervious to damage. However, you can't move once you're grounded. Light. Gained by Cool Spooks. Love these guys. The ability though, why does this exist? It's literally used in only 2 areas, and only one of them has a secret in it. Plus, you don't even need the ability to find the secret, you can just go into it when it's still dark. It's not like it does any damage either. They could have at least made it a screen wipe or something. Did my boy Cool Spook dirty. Tornado. Gained by Twisters. You gain the ability to spin fast as a tornado, zooming through the skies and destroying anything in your wake. Oddly, it isn't able to break blocks, not as destructive as it seems. Well, it is to bosses. Sword. Gained by Blade Knights and Sword Knights. You wield a sword, allowing you to slice through enemies and do a cool spin in the air. Cutter. Gained by Sir Kibbles. You wield a boomerang that cuts through enemies. Parasol. Gained by Waddle Dee or Waddle Doo holding a parasol. It allows you to take a nice stroll safe from anything above you. Additionally, it can also be used to smack enemies or float down slowly and gracefully. Hammer. Gained by Bonkers. You wield a hammer, perfect for smashing through enemies, blocks, or hitting pegs into the ground. You also get a spin like with a sword.
Mike. Gained by Mr. TikTok.
Allows you to get 3 screen wipes, each increasing in damage. Crash. Gained by Poppy Bro Sr. and Bombers. It's a one-use screen wipe, obliterating everything in Kirby's vision. Will. Gained by Willies and Grand Willy. You turn into a super fast wheel, letting you plow through enemies while going at high speeds. Ball. Gained by Bubbles. It turns Kirby into a ball. But hold your horses, as it's not just any ball. It's a bouncy ball. A lot of people make fun of this for being useless, and while I tried giving it a chance, it just doesn't make sense to use. You can only hurt enemies when you're falling or right after you bounce, but it's really difficult to get into this damaging stage, so most of the time you just end up getting hit by falling onto enemies. It has a lot of potential, but it's just really sad in execution. High Jump. Gained by Starmans. It allows you to jump high, destroying anything in your path above you. A little frustrating because you can only use it while you're grounded. Throw. Gained by Rolling Turtles. It allows you to grab enemies and throw them either forward or diagonally. It's essentially spinning, but it pierces enemies or blocks regardless of what you grab.
Backdrop. Gained by Bugsy. It allows you to grab enemies and suplex them in a variety of ways. Very brutal. Backdrop and throw appear as a combination in later games as suplex.
Sleep, gained by naughties. Kirby gets sleepy, a little snoozer. UFO, gained by UFOs. That's their name. It turns Kirby into a UFO, probably the most diverse ability as it has 4 different attacks and gives Kirby a lot of versatility. Unfortunately, it's the most rare ability, and when you do come across the UFO enemy, they're very likely to just appear out of nowhere and smack into you, killing themselves. Or you. Phew, okay, that's everything. So for being the first game to introduce abilities, it has a large variety of options to choose from, with all of them being pretty unique. Though there's one downside, some of these just aren't that viable to use at all. Whether it be because of weird hitboxes, the function of them being confusing, or they're just being better versions of said ability. There will be a lot of times where abilities just won't be worth getting. Though, as I mentioned while describing the abilities, some of them are used to solve puzzles throughout the world, like these cannons or these pegs, which does add value to the abilities outside of combat. But I mean, come on, this just makes Kirby a weaker version of himself. Though, despite this, it is just admittedly fun to mess around with some of these, which I guess is the draw of the abilities in the first place. Yeah, some make Kirby weaker and make no sense to use, but like, look at how silly he is. Light has no excuse though, why are you here? Not you, you can stay. I mean, power-ups in games have been a thing since like, forever, and being able to gain access to power-ups super easily with so many options to choose from is just a really good concept, and it just fits Kirby really well as he's sort of a blank slate, not being able to do anything unless he has access to something he can suck up. Overall, just really fun. So there is one thing I failed to mention about abilities. They are so hard to keep, my god. If anything even dares brush against you, the ability flies away at the speed of light. AKA, one hit, you lose the ability. Yes, you can suck them back up, but your invincibility frames last no time at all, and most of the time, you're having to chase after your abilities. So you're either going to come in contact with other enemies, or you run into the boss you're fighting. Plus, you don't get any invincibility frames after gaining the ability, so you can just get hit right after you're getting it and lose it again. God, it's so frustrating. And speaking of running into enemies, that is going to happen a lot. If you're a fan of Kirby games, then you should know that walking off a screen for a bit allows an enemy to respawn, in case you wanted to get an ability of an enemy you accidentally killed. Which is a really nice mechanic, honestly. However, in Kirby's Adventure, if an enemy's spawn point is off screen for even half a second, it'll instantly respawn. So this just increases the stress of losing an ability, because whatever made you lose it before has a very good chance of being right back where it was, regardless of if you killed it or not. And you know what? There's something that makes matters even worse. The lag is horrendous in this game. Yes, I know that this is an old game that came out on the NES 30 years ago. There's bound to be some processing issues. But if you ever go into an area with a lot of enemies and you have an ability, it is even worth trying to use it. It feels like you're constantly fighting with the game as it slows you down. It's so hard to make precise movements and such when the game is going at 2 frames a second. It doesn't make the game unplayable by any means though, it's just going through it is very frustrating. You never really feel like you're at your best when you're playing because the lag is just dragging you down. I will say though that the remaster and the 3DS version completely eliminates the lag, making it feel so much more fun to play. I feel the game's controls were just a bit too ambitious for the NES to be fully fleshed out without having any issues. Which is really sad, but seeing how it plays on the 3D Classic version is so satisfying in comparison. Like look, at the end of each level there's a bonus game where you press A at the right time to get a number 1 placement, rewarding you with a 1-up. On the NES version though, I constantly kept on getting 3rd place over and over again, even when I was positive I pressed it at the right time. On the 3D Classic version, however, I'd get 1st place over and over again super easily. Yeah, I know it's not fair to compare a 30-year-old game to a 12-year-old remaster, but it does highlight a lot of the issues that made the original game more frustrating to play. Overall, the controls are really good and it's a blast to play when it works, but the performance issues that the game has really drags it down as it makes it a frustrating experience to work through. Enough about the controls though, let's delve into the actual game. When you boot up the game, you're greeted with an opening cutscene and the tutorial and blah blah blah. You press start and we have 3 save slots, meaning our progress will be saved this time around. A really good addition considering how much longer the game is. You start up a new save file and yes! Title cards, let's go! This time around, Dreamland has a total of 7 levels to go through. Vegetable Valley, Ice Cream Island, Butter Building, Grape Gardens, Yogurt Yard, Orange Ocean, and Rainbow Resort. Fun fact, taking each letter of the levels and putting them together backwards spells out Roy G. Biv, which is the preschool way of learning the colors of the rainbow. Or, at least so I've heard, I was never taught that in school. Each level is 7 stages long, outside of Vegetable Valley and Ice Cream Island, having 5 and 6 levels respectively. When you start off the game, you're jumped into a little hub world with doors being used to access each level, and each having a number above them to display where the levels will take you. but might I say, these hub worlds are absolutely stunning to look at. Kirby's Dreamland showed a lot of potential for the art style alone. The game was super pretty and had so much detail in every part of the world, regardless of being a Game Boy game. So I was stoked to see what would be done with the NES, considering it now have access to colors. And seeing the hub world alone made me stoked to see the rest of the visuals in the game. With so many vibrant colors and an enormous amount of details in every hub and stage. My favorite thing about it is the colors matching up with the names. Vegetable Valley is green, Ice Cream Island is blue, Butter Building is yellow, and so on. The prettiest part of the game, in my opinion though, is Rainbow Resort. Every level in it is so pretty with so many celestial looking backgrounds to run through. Like, look at this. It's gorgeous. The enemies also remain super cute, with a ton of new ones to give Kirby new abilities. Like, even though this guy's a trained warrior, he's still just a cute little guy with a sword. Back to the hub worlds themselves though. They're just so pretty. Each of the stage doors have a little area around them depicting what's going to be in the stage. Like how this one has a boat and the stage is Kirby exploring, well, a boat. It just makes the world feel connected and like an actual place instead of just random levels skewed about. The overworlds also have a couple more to them outside of just design and stages though. First off, we have museums. They're these little rooms where you can gain access to abilities easily. They give some pretty good abilities too, so they're really nice to have. The warp room is just a way to warp to other levels easily, which is appreciated so you don't have to run across the hubs to get from place to place. Each of them also has a color associated with them and the Roy G. Biv thing, which I just think is really neat. The arena throws you into an arena, where you get to fight a mini-boss. It's a way to get mini-boss exclusive abilities, and I guess also just a way to fight mini-bosses whenever you'd like. You're also rewarded with a Maxim Tomato if you win. Now for the most interesting side things you're able to access, in my opinion at least, and also a staple of Kirby games from this point on, the mini-games. There are 3 mini-games you're able to play: Crane Fever, Egg Catcher, and Quick Draw. Crane Fever is just a claw machine where you're trying to pick up Kirby's with a claw to get a 1-up or a 2-up in return. The aim feels very accurate to real claw machines considering how it just picks them up perfectly and then drops them. Or how Kirby scooches out of the way. Egg Catcher, my favorite of the bunch. It's a challenge to try to catch eggs by opening your mouth with A, but avoid eating bombs, which results in a loss. It's super fun getting the timing right and trying to collect all 30 eggs. If you do manage to get 30 eggs, you'll get a 3-up. Quick Draw is a reaction-based game, where an exclamation mark will appear on your screen and whoever presses A the fastest wins. Most of the CPUs are pretty easy to beat, for me at least. Bonkers though is a hell to go through. Like, come on, I can barely get 18 milliseconds. And he's not even the final challenge. Accessing the minigames, as well as the other side rooms, is pretty easy as most are unlocked after beating a stage. The minigames are closed after you beat them though, which makes sense. Though after you beat the main game, you can also just play them indefinitely, which I think is nice. No reward, but they're still fun. There is something that makes these minigames terrible though, and that's these stupid buttons. They first appear in Butter Building in Stage 1, and they're easy enough to find, not having to go too far out of your way to get to them. Once you press them, they make an area of the map disappear, which also happens whenever you beat a level. A pretty nice reward. That is until Orange Ocean. This place is a layer of hell and you can't convince me otherwise. All of the buttons here are super dumb to try to get. The first 3 stages require you to have a hammer. And guess which stage you find a hammer in? That's right, Stage 3! Not only that, but Stage 1 and 2 require you to take it to the very end of the level, so you better not get hit or you risk losing it and having to restart the entire level to go get another hammer. And oh boy, Stage 3. You might think it's better, but you get hammer in this stage. But the puzzle just doesn't make any sense. I went through this stage 4 times looking for the stupid button, and you wanna know how you find it? First you have to defeat Bonkers to get the hammer. Then you break this box to go to the secret area. Not too bad so far. Next you have to break this bomb block. But oh no, even though it opened up some water this way, for some reason, don't go back. Instead, press up to go into this door here. Clearly a door. Then you're put into this room. Don't go into this door though. Instead, kill the Splanet and walk into this wall to find laser. Take the laser, then go back. Now you can go through this door so you can shoot a laser at the wall to bounce it down on a fuse. Go into the cannon and you're finally at the button. Do they just not want people to complete their game? And while the other levels' buttons aren't this hard, they're still so stupid to try and complete. Either it's a random door in the wall or it's just an ability that you need that isn't in the level. And this would be fine if it wasn't required for 100% completion, but you need to find every button to get 100% on your profile. At least the minigames are a pretty good reward, right? Right guys? But hey, there's still a lot to the game outside of these stupid buttons. The levels themselves are good, putting the different abilities to pretty good use, like this fireball section or this high jump section. The stages are also pretty distinct, each having their own unique design based on the level. For example, Grape Gardens having a lot of cloudy and castle-like areas, or Orange Ocean having a lot of water-based stages. My personal favorite is Butter Building. The entire level is based around climbing this giant tower, starting at the very bottom. There's also a lot of fun segments, like these parts where you run around the tower, or this room that has a mirrored variant that you can use to try to escape. Also, the music here just slaps. The end of the levels also have a sort of transition stage to go to the next one. The end of Butter Building sends you to the clouds towards Grape Gardens. The end of Orange Ocean is Ice Theme preparing to send you to Rainbow Resort. Or how the end of Ice Cream Island has little castle segments to send you to Butter Building. Just everything about the world feels so connected and each stage feels so unique. They just did really well putting care into each area, making Dreamland feel like it's a real place. Fun fact, this level is based off of Kirby's Dreamland. Obviously. More interestingly though, all of the rooms in this level are based on areas from that game, crammed into mini segments, which I think is really cool. They also brought back the moon as a secret, though it being required for a button kinda sucks. Another thing is there's a lot more room to move around compared to Dreamland. It just feels really good being able to move around more freely. Some of the levels can be kind of a chore to go through though, with some oddly tight sections and having to search every corner for buttons. Overall, they're still a blast to go through. Only minor complaint is a couple of these levels just feel like padding to make the game feel longer, only having a couple of rooms before beating the stage. Though they're not tedious or anything, so I can't really complain. The most important part of the entire game to me though, is the music. And oh boy did the composers pop off. Once again being composed by Jun Ishikawa with the help of Hiraka Zando. Sorry if I mispronounced those. The game supports a solid amount of tracks that I absolutely adore, with things like Butter Building, Forest Area, Rainbow Resort, Ice Cream Island, just all becoming absolute classics, appearing in multiple games in the future. The variety here is just so nice, with songs being relaxing, energetic, mysterious, or whatever the museum theme is. The music just really brings the game together, making an already memorable experience so much nicer by being able to attach these unforgettable tracks to each person's experience with the game. Like god, I hate Orange Ocean with a passion, but at least the music pops while suffering. Speaking of sound though, the sound effects in this game are also really good. We're using a lot from Dreamland admittedly, but still adding a bunch of new ones that become classics. Like the sound that you get when you get a new ability, or the super awesome gnarly radical sound effect that plays when you get a double star projectile. Okay. Enough about all that lame stuff. What about bosses? You're clearly asking.
Where the f am I?
The test of your skill, combining all of what you learned into a battle to progress through the game. Well, after playing this and Dreamland, it's easy to see that HAL has a knack for making some pretty good bosses, both attack and design-wise. You find a boss at the end of each level, beating them allowing you to progress to the next one. Pretty standard. Once you beat a boss though, you can't refight it, which I think is annoying, but oh well. Fun fact, Kirby's Victory Dance is back. That is all. First off, we got the tree from the first game. He made a return, which is really cool to see. I'm sure this won't become a recurring theme or anything though. He's still just a vertical hitbox that takes up about a fourth of your screen, so he's pretty easy to defeat. However now, he's even easier. You can literally just sit here with freeze and he dies in an instant. Which is honestly kind of a problem with abilities. They just make killing the bosses way too easy sometimes. For Ice Cream Island, we have Paint Roller. He rolls around and makes paintings on one of the 4 canvases to attack you, some of which you can inhale to get abilities. Trying to avoid him can be pretty annoying because he just, doesn't really have telegraphing for which way he's gonna go. Outside of that though, it's a cool boss fight. The iconic duo, Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright, appearing for the first time in Butter Building. They rhythmically tag out after attacking Kirby, making you use one of their projectiles to attack the other. It's a really cool boss fight that's super fun and creative. Up in the clouds of Grape Gardens, you come across Kracko yet again, being another boss from Dreamland. He has the same attack patterns from said game with a couple of extras added in. There's also this little chase sequence at the beginning of the battle where you have to use the high jump ability to dodge Kracko, which is just cool. A little annoying because you can't bring other abilities in easily, but fighting Kracko with high jump or no ability is still fun. This one has always been a weird one to me. Heavy Mole is the boss of Yogurt Yard, and is a side-scrolling boss where you have to chase down this robot that's digging through the ground, constantly having to move as to not be left behind. While it is annoying that you can get insta-killed pretty easily here, I mostly just found it weird because it's the only boss that we've ever seen like this, plus it only appears in this game and the remake of this game. That's not a bad thing though, it just makes it super unique. After traversing the hell that is Orange Ocean, it's time to face off against this mysterious figure you've seen throughout the game. Oh wait, I haven't even mentioned him yet. First appearing in Vegetable Valley 4, this mysterious masked figure throws you an invincibility candy and then disappears right after doing so. You next see them in Ice Cream Island 3, where he sends his minions out to battle you. You're giving me mixed vibes here, man. You're either making me invincible or trying to kill me. This continues happening throughout the game. Mostly murder attempts, but he does occasionally give you an invincibility candy. Anyways, we make it face to face with him in Stage 7 on Orange Ocean. We're put into a room where we're faced with a sword instructing us to get it. Kinda sad I can't use whatever ability I want as it locks you in its sword once you pick it up, but it does give you back whatever ability you had once the battle is over. And also just being forced to sword fight is kinda sick. Now finally, the identity of this masked swordsman Sorry, give me a sec.
Meta Night of Bears, Meta Night of Bears, Meta Night of Bears, Meta Night of Bears.
Anyways, once we pick up the sword, the battle with Meta Knight begins. Honestly, the entire build-up accumulating to this battle is just so badass. And the battle itself is pretty challenging, but super rewarding once you manage to beat him. More mysteriously, once you beat him, his mask breaks, and it's revealed that he looks very similar to Kirby before disappearing one last time. I'm sure this mystery will be resolved in, like, the next game or something. Finally, at the end of Rainbow Resort, you're face to face with Triple D yet again, having your duel at the Fountain of Dreams. That's the place where the source of all dreams is mentioned at the beginning. DD's fight is basically exactly the same as it was in Dreamland, with a couple new moves. Like him puffing up and flying after you. That's the only new move. Regardless, a fun fight, especially with the newly introduced abilities as he has a bunch of HP. Fun fact, this is one of the few games that DDD appears in where he isn't accompanied by DDD's theme. Instead it's just the typical boss theme. Meta Knight also gets the same treatment, but he didn't really have a big role, so that one makes sense. Once you defeat DDD, you're finally able to reassemble the Star Rod and put it back into its place atop the Fountain of Dreams. DDD begs and pleads for Kirby to not put it in, but Kirby ain't having it and smacks DDD out of the way with the Star Rod. Harsh. You pop it into the fountain and the day is saved. But actually not. For inside, the FOD was an ancient evil ball. It flies off into space as Kirby and DDD panic.
DDD sucks up Kirby and shoots him into the sky to chase after the ball.
This is where we get the returning mid-air shooter-like fight. Which has been a lot scarier by the fact that you're in a time limit this time, because unfortunately, Kirby cannot fly. Well, I mean, not that fast, I guess. You bust the ball and it retreats to the moon where you chase him on the Warp Star. This is where the final boss is revealed. Nightmare. With the Star Red in hand, you face off against this devilish entity, starting off the tradition of Kirby Hellspawns. By that I mostly just mean he has a super cool design that contrasts everything else in the game, making him really creepy. I absolutely love it. The fight is super fun, with the Star Red acting like the sword ability with a projectile. It makes the entire sequence just feel epic. The atmosphere and the music here is just a banger too. It's all so good and makes for the perfect final battle. Even though you can just kind of stand in a corner and he can't hit you, but that's besides the point. The fight ends with Nightmare, screaming in pain as he disintegrates. We also just kind of blow up a chunk of the moon, but I guess that's alright. And now the day is actually saved. We fly back to Dreamland accompanied by DDD where we get to learn what actually happened. You see, DDD knew Nightmare was coming to conquer Dreamland by invading everyone's dreams, so he broke the Star Rod to stop that from happening, handing down the pieces to those he trusted with guarding it. However, this in turn got rid of everyone's dreams. With the Star Red back in place, Nightmare now had the ability to manifest and take over Dreamland. This whole thing probably could have been avoided if they just told Kirby or something, but oh well. Once we told this as Kirby's flying back alongside DDD, they're basically besties now. After the credits roll, we're shown a wholesome bye-bye screen, and the game is over. Oh god. There's an extra mode again! Your max health is cut down by 3 and you can't save the game at any point. What? This extra mode is really bad. You see, it was cool in Dreamland because that game was short, so changing the enemies to be more difficult and giving the bosses new attack patterns made the game really fun to go through again. That is not the case here though. None of the enemies are changed and the bosses have the exact same attack patterns. The only difference is you have 3 hit points. Not to mention you can't save at any point in the game, so if you ever want to take a break or something, that sucks. And like, who cares if this isn't required for completion, you can just ignore it. But guess what? It is. You need to complete this to get a perfect on your profile. It's just artificial difficulty that doesn't really need to exist. The worst part to me is I get to the end of the game, literally at the nightmare fight, and the game crashed. Isn't that just awesome? And oh boy, I hope you remember, you can't save during the extra mode, so it started me all over. Outside of that though, I think that's it. I mean, there is a boss rush mode, alongside the minigames I mentioned previously on your save file, but neither of these are required for completion. There's some fun challenges you can do. I guess I'll just... So, that's Kirby's Adventure. Overall, it's just a fun and charming platformer that has stood the test of time. Its outstanding graphics making it one of the prettiest NES games, unforgettable soundtrack being remade countless times, and unique gameplay mechanics such as the copy ability setting a standard for the future. All of this making it a classic that is still worth playing today, regardless of some annoying mechanics or processing issues. So much care and love was put into the game by the devs, and that's made very clear just by playing through the game. Whether you're a fan of platformers or just looking for a fun and lighthearted game to play, Kirby's Adventure is definitely worth checking out. And hey, the 3D Classic version is always an option. Oh wait.